Hey guys, so they sure knew how to tackle large-scale projects in the Soviet Union. They could divert rivers, build cities where there were none before, conquer the north, create new seas, and urgently lay railways in permafrost conditions. Today, we're going to talk about the most incredible and abandoned places in the Soviet Union. These forsaken projects, born in the Soviet era, seem to speak to us about the country's former power and ambitions. Crimean Nuclear Power Station. This unfinished nuclear power plant is located 4 kilometers away from the town of Shkolkine. According to the 1964 project calculations, this station was supposed to provide electricity to the entire Crimean Peninsula and usher in a new era of industry throughout Crimea. Construction of the station began in 1975. The plan was to launch the first reactor in 1989. There was supposed to be a total of 4 reactors with a maximum capacity of 4 gigawatts. Construction seemed to be proceeding according to plan. However, the Chernobyl disaster and the dire state of the economy spelled the end for this project. The construction of the Crimean nuclear power station was included in the Guinness Book of Records as the most expensive power plant of this kind. By the time construction was halted, over 500 million Soviet rubles had been spent on the station. Another 250 million lay on storage sites in the form of unused equipment. What is most striking is the scale of the structure. Its height was about 66 meters, roughly equivalent to a 25-story building. In the 1990s and subsequent years, the unfinished power plant was dismantled for scrap metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous. The Dubna Sphere. In 1981, a huge semisphere with a diameter of 18 meters, made of cellular fiberglass, was discovered by local residents in the forests of the Tver region. To this day, the origin of this huge 5-story structure remains unknown. Over the years, the sphere has become the subject of numerous legends, including theories involving extraterrestrial invaders preparing to land in the Tver region. The true version, however, is that the sphere was initially constructed as a radio-transparent protective cover for a radar station's antenna to shield it from meteorological influences. According to one travel blogger, the sphere fell due to a cable break when it was being transported by helicopter. Then it became a local attraction. This version seems quite plausible, but there's one issue. Why does the sphere have metal fastenings? Another version suggests that the sphere served as a decoy target in case of a sudden aerial attack by the enemy on the country's anti-aircraft defense system. The sphere began to gain popularity in the 2000s. Getting to the sphere was quite challenging, so local residents were happy to show tourists the way. Thanks to the fact that the sphere's walls reflected and amplified sound, creating a multifaceted echo, musicians organized an acoustic concert inside it on February 18, 2012. It was attended by more than 100 guests. Guitars, balalaikas, accordions, violins, and other musical instruments were played during the concert. Unfortunately, it's impossible to see this acoustic attraction anymore. The structure collapsed in February 2021. According to social media users, this may have happened because an off-road vehicle decided to cut out a large hole in it so their cars could enter. Balaklava Submarine Base. This happened during the Cold War. Amid the clashing of arms between the USA and the USSR, Stalin issued a directive to create a park of nuclear submarines in the Black Sea. Thus began the monumental construction of the underground base. Since the facility was top secret, it was given the name Object 825 GTS. The base itself was intended for the shelter, repair, and servicing of submarines, as well as the storage of ammunition, including nuclear warheads. The length of the central tunnel was 602 meters, the depth was 8 meters, and the width was up to 22 meters. Such a tunnel could accommodate up to 7 submarines. The total area of the storage and passage facilities was 10,000 square meters. The complex was constructed over 8 years, from 1953 to 1961. Over 120,000 tons of rock were removed during construction. The facility was also a Category 1 anti-nuclear protection structure, which implied protection from a direct hit by a 100-kiloton atomic bomb. The last submarine passed through it in 1993. In 2002, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine established the Naval Museum Complex there. The museum includes parts of a 600-meter central tunnel, empty storage for a nuclear arsenal, as well as a series of residential quarters and auxiliary premises, and submarine docks. The entire complex consists of curved tunnels and massive blast doors that were intended to mitigate the impact wave in the event of a nuclear strike. The base didn't just house submarines, but also wet and dry docks, repair workshops, torpedo warehouses, and of course, nuclear warheads. Although the Balaclava submarine base was designed to accommodate and protect all the dock workers, in case of necessity, the residents of the entire city could also take shelter there. Horrifying Hospital in Moscow. One of the buildings of the Horrifying Hospital has become the epicenter of mystery and nightmares, not just in Moscow, but globally. The abandoned Horrifying Hospital has earned its place on an unofficial list of the scariest places on Earth. In the early 1980s, construction began here for a multi-profile city hospital with 1,300 beds. The project was halted 5 years later, with all the buildings already erected. Paradoxically, for 25 years, this hospital has been maiming and killing people, instead of saving them. Instead of hospital staff, it became home to Satanists, homeless people, the mentally unstable, and thrill seekers. Tragedies regularly occur here, with people falling from the roof or plunging down elevator shafts. The hospital's mystical reputation is amplified by its rather eerie appearance. Looking from above, the locations of the main buildings seem to form the International Biological Hazard symbol. After the release of the Resident Evil movie in 2002, the Horrifying Hospital got the nickname Umbrella for its similarity with the zombie corporation. There's a legend that there used to be a church and a cemetery on the site of the hospital, which is why it's cursed. In reality, there were no structures there, only a stream and a swamp. Either the architects didn't account for the unfavorable soil, unsuitable for an 11-story building, or they didn't drain the swamp properly. But the basements started getting flooded. There's another legend circulating online about the Horrifying Hospital. It claims that there's a secret multi-level laboratory beneath the building, while the hospital itself serves as a decoy. Some users explain this theory by the fact that hot water has been supplied to this uninhabited area for many years. Object 221. This object isn't on the map. It is located in the Crimean Mountains, 18 kilometers from Sevastopol. You can find it near the village of Morozovka. The bunker building is disguised as an ordinary 2-story house. It can withstand a direct nuclear strike and was camouflaged from enemy aerial reconnaissance with painted windows, making it look like a quarry control facility. The actual quarry was located below. The decoy concept was that gravel was mined there. But in reality, they processed soil extracted during the construction of the facility. It was a truly advanced underground city. The construction began in 1977. Just 10 years later, the complex was 90% complete. They even installed government satellite communication underground. The facility had a depth of 200 meters, and the command and control blocks had 4 levels. To put into perspective, it was like a 5-story building with 10 entrances. In 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia handed over the military facility to Ukraine. It was guarded until 2005, when the military unit responsible for guarding the bunker was disbanded. After the guards disappeared, tourists, metal thieves, and adventure seekers began to frequent the site. Nuclear-powered lighthouse on Cape Aniva. The Sakhalin Lighthouse on Cape Aniva is located on Savucha Rock, in an area prone to numerous currents and occasional fog. The lighthouse tower has 9 floors. It used to house technical and living quarters for a team of 12 people. There were challenges with maintaining the lighthouse. Equipment broke down frequently. It was difficult to deliver supplies and spare parts, and maintaining normal conditions for the lighthouse crew proved to be a challenge. Eventually, it was decided to switch Aniva to autonomous operation. For this purpose, a nuclear battery, a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, was installed on the lighthouse. As a result, the lighthouse became uninhabited in 1990, and it was serviced by personnel from a nearby border guard station. In 2006, the term of operation of the nuclear battery ended, and a new one wasn't installed because satellite navigation systems had emerged, making the lighthouse unnecessary. The lamp at Aniva hasn't been lit since. Divina Missile Complex. The forests near the capital of Latvia hide the once unique and completely secret Divina Launch Center, built in 1964. It's a massive complex consisting of 4 launch silos and underground bunkers. In our time, most of the facility is flooded, and visiting the complex without an experienced guide is highly discouraged for 2 reasons: remnants of toxic rocket fuel and the instability of the structure. Workshop number 8 of the Dagdiesel plant. This abandoned facility on the coastline of Makhachkala used to be the 8th workshop of the Dagdiesel plant. The purpose of constructing this workshop on the water was to test torpedoes and other weaponry. It was the only Soviet facility of this kind. A 530,000 cubic meter pit was excavated using dredgers to house the underground part of the workshop, referred to as the array. A 14-meter reinforced concrete structure was installed directly at the bottom of the excavated pit, and once it was freed from its metal frame, it floated to the sea surface and was permanently anchored. The total area of the secret workshop was over 5,000 square meters. The secret station was well equipped for both residence and work. The building included comfortable sleeping quarters, a cafeteria, a library, and a large gym. An elevator was also constructed for access to a 9-story observation tower. The testing base has been abandoned since 1966. According to experts, its platform could still be operational today, but unfortunately, the above-water part is in very poor condition and continues to deteriorate under the influence of the Caspian Sea's waves. The closure of the 8th workshop has become the stuff of legends, but in reality, the reason was quite simple. The Dagdiesel switched to producing deep-water torpedoes in the late 1950s, and therefore, it was no longer possible to test them at the station. The 8th workshop was guarded and maintained for another 10 years, and then the equipment was moved ashore, leaving the facility abandoned. Lopatino Phosphate Mine. There is a huge phosphate mine in the Moscow region, near the city of Voskresensk. It is one of the most unique and largest deposits in Europe. The development of the mine began back in the 1930s. Phosphate was needed as a raw material for mineral fertilizers in Soviet agriculture. This deposit wasn't only unique because of its size, but also because of the shallow depth at which the valuable material was found. This particular characteristic allowed for the abandonment of deep mining shafts, extracting the valuable minerals in a less costly manner. A rather specific equipment was used for it. To extract the ore, they used multi-bucket excavators, known as stackers. The peak production of the mine occurred in the 1960s. During that time, the annual extraction from the mine reached up to 400 tons of mineral raw materials. Thanks to the work of the excavators, incredible landscapes were created. The mine operated until 1993. However, after the collapse of the USSR, the demand for fertilizer disappeared. The mine was essentially abandoned, and most of the quarries were flooded. Signs of corrosion appeared on the expensive machinery. In the early 2000s, the extraction of quartz sand was resumed at the quarry number 12, not far from the settlement of Phosphortny. Sand was extracted until 2018. A locomotive called Kukushka ran on a single-track railway line. However, a year later, the track was dismantled, and the extraction was suspended indefinitely. Ionosphere Research Station. It's no secret that during the Soviet era, there was a widespread emphasis on scientific research in various fields of science and technology. Thus, there's a unique ionosphere research station in Kharkiv Oblast, Ukraine. It was constructed just before the collapse of the Soviet Union. The station had an area the size of a football field, on which several large antennas were placed. The diameter of the gigantic parabolic antenna was 25 meters, and its power output was close to 25 megawatts. Unfortunately, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, such scientific and expensive equipment became of little use to the young Ukrainian state. Today, the station is simply decaying and being looted by scavengers and metal hunters, despite the fact that it's been guarded since 2001, when Ukraine recognized the station as a national asset. Northern Crown 5-Star Hotel. The construction of the hotel, initially named Petrogradskaya and later Northern Crown, began in 1988. The hotel isn't famous for its beauty, but for numerous mishaps and unfortunate incidents during its prolonged construction. Furthermore, the hotel gained a less than favorable reputation when Metropolitan John passed away within its walls, having suffered a heart attack immediately after the building's consecration. In 1995, the construction of the Northern Crown was nearly finished. This modern 5-star hotel was designed to accommodate 247 rooms with 5 restaurants, 6 bars, 2 cafes, and its own sports complex and swimming pool. During its extended construction period, ownership of the hotel changed hands multiple times. Today, the building is abandoned, its walls have lost their paint, and the plaster is peeling. But the atmosphere within the Northern Crown still holds traces of its former luxury. The seaside city of Oil Rocks, Azerbaijan. Soviet scientists discovered vast oil reserves in the Caspian Sea in the 1940s and immediately began extracting it. Over time, a whole city was built on iron platforms and embankments. During prosperous times, power plants, dorms, and a hospital were constructed there. There was even a cultural center, a bread factory, a soft drink plant, and a park with real trees. The number of platforms with residents grew to 200, and the total length of streets reached 350 kilometers. However, cheap Siberian oil eventually rendered the seaside city financially unsustainable. As a result, it began to decline, and today is inhabited by no more than 2,000 people. The last great Soviet scientific project, the Hadron Collider in Protvino. There's a treasure worth billions of rubles buried in the forests of the Moscow region, 100 kilometers from Moscow, near the town of Protvino. The underground ring accelerator measures 21 kilometers in circumference. In 1983, construction work began on this facility using mining techniques and 26 vertical shafts. Over the course of 11 years, a tunnel was built in dry docks at depths ranging from 20 to 60 meters, with an inner diameter of 5 meters. Along the entire length of the tunnel, underground halls were constructed every 1.5 kilometers to accommodate large equipment. They were connected to the surface by vertical shafts. In 1994, after the collapse of the USSR, the construction of a unique neutron complex began. Particles accelerated in the collider would be directed through a separate tunnel into the Earth, towards Lake Baikal, where a special detector was installed on its floor. The neutrino telescope on Lake Baikal still exists and is located 3.5 kilometers from the shore, at a depth of 1 kilometer. After the main tunneling work was completed, the construction of the accelerator complex was fully halted due to a lack of funding. Well, that's all for today, friends. Like the video if you found it interesting, and let me know the coolest thing you learned in the comments, and we'll see you next time.